I have a lot to say. So today I want to talk about and share information regarding when I know God is communicating with me and the sources that He chooses to use to communicate. Stay tuned. So back in 2012, please check out some of my other videos to get a little bit more background about what I was experiencing. But I went through a stage or some kind of phase of schizophrenia. And I was hearing these voices in my head, let alone the thoughts and the attitudes that I had promoted prior to ground zero were projecting and were making themselves present. I had so much confusion going on that whatever God was saying, what it looked like to me, which is what the doctors were saying, you're going to die, this is it, this is your final year, get your affairs in order, that was drowning out everything that God was saying. And it wasn't until I got in my Bible, because I got in my Bible, I didn't even know what to read, because the scriptures that I had known in the past seemed to be not working. So I got in my Bible and I began to fast, and then during that process, I was able to discern the voice of God. So let's get right into it. Get your hot chocolate. Check out my video on how to make delicious non-dairy hot chocolate. But to get into it, I have never heard the voice of God in my head or out in the room or out in anything. The way that God has spoken to me is through confirmation. So this is how it'll go. I'll be going about my everyday life, and all of a sudden I will get this soothing thought. And the thought, it gives me an energy. I feel an energy with the thought. The thought causes all other thoughts to be silenced. And I can feel that this is something substantial. Now, I don't go right away and, I've never gone right away and been like, oh, okay, I'm not going to say never, but typically I will store it in my inner brain. And then later on, something will happen throughout the day, a phone call, an interaction or something, and it will confirm this thought or this ideal that I have that gave me the energy. It can come in television form, it can come in music, it can come with interactions with people, interactions with my child. And so for the best example that I can give about this is the organic coffee enemas, because that was a big step for me to be able to do those, because I thought that it was absolutely crazy when I first heard about it. And when I first heard about it, I did hear it, I heard it clearly, but it was so radical that I just was like, that can't be. I'm not storing that anywhere, And so a few days later, I was going about my life and I was looking up something else completely different. And I think it was about detoxing or something, and on a website, and there was organic coffee enema. So it just began to intrigue me. I'm like, okay, so this isn't crazy. It's not revolutionary. People know about it. People are doing it. It's a common practice. And I said, okay, but I was procrastinating about, actually doing one, but I began to kind of like entertain it, toy with it a little bit. And then I was giving someone some information, a completely different day, probably a week or so later. And during that conversation, the person mentions to me the organic coffee enemas. And that for me was like, at that moment I said, okay, God, I get it. I immediately began to do my research and find out about them, how to do them, what are the side effects, and everything that I could get, information that I can get about the organic coffee enemas to get me comfortable with the ideal, to help me do them effectively and things like that. So God talks to me through confirmation. I could be reading my Bible and He'll give me a scripture, something in the scripture will stand out, and I could have read the scripture 50 times before. But on this particular day, for this particular event, something in that scripture will stand out, and it'll be something that I never noticed before. And then I'll go to church, and the whole sermon is about that thing. So looking back at 2012 for me, that was the lowest point of my life. I was devastated. I was in despair. I was depressed. I was tortured during that time. And I felt like I had truly been visited by evil. I felt like the devil had touched me. I felt like he had manifested himself to me. And that being so, because, well, the reason why I felt this way was because I'm not a drinker. I'm not a smoker. I'm not a drug user. I don't have any obvious, bad habits. So I didn't understand how and where lung cancer would come from. So I felt like the devil had visited me, and I needed God to show up in a mighty way, and I felt like I could determine that. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, but I felt like the devil has made his presence known. So God, I need you to make your presence known to me. I want to hear your voice, because I had heard people throughout my life talk about God had spoken to them. They saw him, they had these encounters with God, and I felt like I had an encounter with evil, and I felt like God needed to make an appearance to me as well. And I would just say, I would pray and ask it, what, if you just speak to me and I can hear you, I know everything is going to be okay. That's what I prayed. So I began to fast so that I could hear the voice of God. So what I did during my fast was, it was about 8 months, and I turned off every communication. If it wasn't praise and worship, preaching, ministering, reading my Bible, something about God, I was not partaking in it. And I was basically trying to summon him, and I would cry and I would pray and I'd be like, God, please speak to me. I need to hear your voice. I kept up with these shenanigans for 8 months. And eventually God checked me. I'm not going to say he checked me. I'm being dramatic. He rebuked me. So it was 8 months in. We were at a family gathering, and I was so raw and emotional at this time. I was trying to show my family something that had touched my heart, and they didn't get me at all during this time. They thought I was a raving lunatic, I guess. But I couldn't find it. So I was with my aunt. I was trying to show it to her, and I was going through, and she moved my hand out the way and clicked on this video. And it was Bishop T.D. Jakes, Can You Hear Me Now? I will link it in the description box, but after hearing that message, God had been speaking to me all along. It wasn't the way that I wanted it. It wasn't the way that I felt was appropriate. But after that message, I went home and I cried out and I repented and I asked God to forgive me. That message touched on so many parts and elements of God speaking and what it takes and requires that by the end of it, I got it. I was in error. So what mistake, you said, could I make? She's just asking for God to speak to her. People say it all the time. I had heard it so much through my life, it became something kind of almost trivial. And I didn't realize what I was actually asking for, who I was asking to speak to me. As though he's my puppet, This is God, God's thoughts are not like our thoughts. His plans are not like our plans. He surely has a plan for my life. And I wasn't even prepared to hear it at that time. You know what I'm saying? So me being driven by fear and panic and all the things that I was feeling, I'm glad that it didn't. God is wiser than me. Did not encourage him to speak to me the way that I was asking. If God had have made a special appearance, he could have said anything. Let me just say this right now. God is not worried about cancer. He is not worried about nothing that we deal with in life. He is in control. He is all-powerful, almighty. If people tremble and shake at the presence of Michael Jackson or Whitney Houston, God speaking to me could have killed me. It could have been anything. This is the biggest celebrity. You know what I'm saying? This is so much power. If you think about Moses at the burning bush and his hair turning white, well, I don't want to be gray because I'm already dyeing my hair. So I wasn't thinking about the magnitude of what I was asking for. But If God had spoke to me, it could have went something like this. My child, Janisa, I want you to go to the store and buy a sign. And I want you to write these words on that sign. And I want you to go out to that street and I want you to stand on it for 10 days holding my message. If God had chosen to speak to me at that time, and those were his words, I would have been obligated to do it. I couldn't have been like, oh no, that was a mistake. That wasn't God. I heard it just like I'm speaking right now. I would have had to do it unto death. Or he could have been like, my child Janisa, I want you to sell your house and everything in it and move to a third world country and do my will. He could have said that too. If he had made a special appearance and given me a directive, I would have been obligated to do it, prepared or not. It's God. Who tells God what to do? God tells people what to do. Who was I to think that I could tell God how to make me feel safe and how to make me feel comfortable? I can only imagine how insulted he was. I get aggravated. I feel a certain kind of way when my son does it to me regarding his care and the things that I have planned for him, because he's a child. What does he know? And he's serious when he's questioning me or when he's telling me what he thinks should go down. And if I don't tolerate it from my son, I know God, it ain't good to be doing it to God. Hold on, wait a minute. Don't take that. Wait a minute. Oh, let me. Jewelry. I don't got enough fingers. This one don't even fit. But if I bang it with a hammer, it'll swell up, and then I could keep this one on. And I got my purse, my other one. Okay, I think I got everything. No! Don't take my band. I just love my band. I love my band. Wait, no, wait. So good today. I know there's going to be a provision for me. I don't have to sell my house. Mom. Hi, Mom. I know it's radical. I know, but what can I say? I heard his voice. I can't deny it. I know. He doesn't show up when you expect him, but he will show up. Yes, I need a miracle. Yes, I know I don't want to sell my house, but yeah, like Abraham and Isaac at the bush of provision. Yeah, Mom, I think they're coming for me. I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to tell you what happens, okay? All right. Smooches, let you go. Bye. Oh, you ready for me? Okay, let me just go ahead and get my things together. And you know what? I think I forgot something very important. Can't close without it. It's crucial. It seems like a bad sign that I don't have it in here. I seem to have forgotten my ink pen. So this is we can reschedule for another time. Perhaps. Oh, you have a ink pen, I guess. Let's go forward with this. Document signed here. Okay. It's not official though. There are other documents to sign. This can't be it, right? Because any moment I'm going to get this indication that I don't need to sell my house. Everything is already gone, but I could at least, there's a provision for me to keep my house, here. Okay. I am one person with a sickness that God can and has a remedy for, and it is not everything that I thought it was in the beginning. I'm making this sickness so big for me. It's big for me, but not for God. There are so many other issues. I'm one person. There's so many other people in need and needing to be touched and hear and sown into. If he had came and talked to me, it's God. Nobody tells God what to say. Nobody tells God what to do. Nobody, he would have said his plan and his will at that time, and it could have been anything. Me asking God to actually verbally speak to me was a way of me showing mistrust and me not trusting in him. It was me trying to order my deliverance from this cancer. But what I had to come to realize that God has a bigger plan, and he's juggling all kinds of things in real dire situations. And if he had made a special appearance, I'm going to do his will. He's not worried about cancer. He has a remedy and a plan for that. And just because that was my fear and my what was over, what I was dealing with at the time, I realized very early on that that wasn't something that God was concerned about. Well, how does she know that? Because I'm still dealing with cancer. That's how I know it. And I had to come to a point to where I trust God completely, and I'm not living in fear or in panic. And I trust this path and this plan that he has for me. And after that, it was a good lesson for me because I stopped. It was my final straw in releasing myself to completely put my life in God's hands and trust him and his will for me.